It is good to be here and good to see everyone, and it's good to be back preaching. As I always say, it's my favorite place to preach is right here. And with the gospel meeting, and then my being gone to a gospel meeting last week, it feels like it's been a long time since I've stood here and preached to the Bremen congregation. But it is good to be here and to be back home and to be back with you. I say it a lot, but I mean it. It is my favorite place to preach, and I love our Bremen family here, and I'm so thankful for all of you. It is, of course, Mother's Day. We want to wish a happy Mother's Day to all the mothers. Not everybody is a mother, but everybody has a mother, and so it's certainly, the Bible teaches the concept of rendering honor unto whom honor is due. And certainly mothers are due a great deal of honor, so we're mindful of that. I haven't always done a sermon centered around mothers on Mother's Day, but I ran across a very skeletal outline that there was a fellow that I used to go to preaching school with, and I just had it in my files, and I liked it, and I saw that, and I said, you know what? I think I'm going to preach that this Mother's Day. And the sermon centers around the question of what is a mother, or what a mother is. And it's using that word, mother, as an acrostic, each of these letters representing a characteristic. There's so many things we could say about mothers as far as what they do and who they are. And even with this, using this acrostic, there are many different directions we could go. I want to read something and share with you. I saw this. I've seen different variations of this, but I looked up one, and it's not original with me, but I think it's pretty appropriate. And it's a little bit humorous, but it's also very spot on. It's a job description. Somebody decided they were going to write this up like, if you're going to be a mom, if this were a job you were applying for, here's a description. Sometimes when we're in the secular world or whatever, there's a job posting, and you read, and they'll tell you, here's the job description, so you can decide if you're qualified, if you want that, if you want to apply for that position. But this one was listed, and kind of the intro just says, this is hysterical. If it had been presented this way, I don't believe any of us would have done it. The position is mom, or mommy, or mama, or ma, any number of terms, I suppose. Job description: long-term team player needed for challenging, permanent work in an often chaotic environment. Candidates must possess excellent communication and organizational skills and be willing to work variable hours, which will include evenings and weekends, and frequent 24-hour shifts on call. Some overnight travel required, including trips to primitive camping sites on rainy weekends and endless sports tournaments in faraway cities. Travel expenses not reimbursed. Extensive courier duties also required. Responsibilities the rest of your life. Must be willing to be hated, at least temporarily, until someone needs money. Must be willing to bite tongue repeatedly. Must possess the physical stamina of a pack mule, be able to go from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds flat, in case this time the screams from the backyard are not just someone crying wolf. Must be willing to face stimulating technical challenges such as small gadget repair, mysteriously sluggish toilets, stuck zippers, and so on. Must screen phone calls, maintain calendars, and coordinate production of multiple homework projects. Must have ability to plan and organize social gatherings for clients of all ages and mental outlooks. Must be willing to be indispensable 1 minute and embarrassment the next. Must handle assembly and product safety testing of 500,000 cheap plastic toys and battery-operated devices. Must always hope for the best, but be prepared for the worst. Must assume final, complete accountability for the quality of the end product. Responsibilities also include floor maintenance and janitorial work throughout the facility. Well, under the heading of possibility for advancement and promotion, none. Your job is to remain in the same position for years without complaining, constantly retraining and updating your skills so that those in your charge can ultimately surpass you. Previous experience? Well, unfortunately, sometimes none required. But on-the-job training is offered on a continually exhausting basis. Wages and compensation. Oh, get this. You pay them. Offering frequent raises and bonuses. A balloon payment is due when they turn 18 because of the assumption that furthering their education is going to help them to become financially independent. When you die, you give them whatever's left. But the oddest thing about this reverse salary scheme is that you actually enjoy it, and you only wish you could do more. Benefits. While there is no health or dental insurance, no pension, no tuition reimbursement, no paid holidays, no stock options. However, this job supplies limitless opportunities for personal growth, unconditional love, and free hugs and kisses for life if you play your cards right. As a footnote, there is no retirement, ever. If you are fortunate enough, you'll become grandparents, but hopefully not too soon. It's a pretty good description, job description for a mother. And a lot of those humorously written are nonetheless very true. A lot of these we'll cover as we go through this acrostic of what a mother is. There's a lot of confusion and misinformation in the world today when it comes to gender. What is a man? What is a woman? It's kind of, I don't know if humorous is the word I would use. It's funny, not a ha-ha funny kind of way, as we say sometimes. It's more, I guess, ironic that it only took the leak of a Supreme Court document for everybody suddenly to understand what a woman is. I mean, everybody knows now. They're just talking about that, and that's been a big news story. But there is a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of confusion pertaining to that. But the fact is, men and women are truly distinct. And it's amazing that would even need to be said at any point in history. But, we live in strange times, as they say sometimes. God created men and women to fill unique roles in the church, in society, and in the family. And let me tell you something. Men, you'd make a terrible wife. You'd make a terrible mother. And women, you'd make a terrible man, a terrible dad. God made us to fulfill a specific role. And things go best when we fill those roles, when we respect how the Creator made us and how He created those roles. But there is something truly special, truly unique about a mother. So using this word, what is a mother? M-O-T-H-E-R. First of all, we could say a mother is a manager. She manages so many things in the home. We could mention she manages the household itself. 1 Timothy 5:14, Paul says there, I will therefore that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. Thayer's Greek-English lexicon gives this other, translation or definition, if you will, of that term that is translated in the King James, guide the house. And one of the definitions or one of the meanings is to manage family affairs. And it literally carries the idea of an overseer. Now, we understand there's a role of the woman, there's a role of the man, and the woman is not to usurp authority over her husband, but at the same time, she's to oversee the household. She runs that thing, and if your house is anything like mine, you understand that. Moms just have a unique ability to manage the household. And sometimes when, even in my household, we've had a discussion, and I'll say, well, maybe you want to leave something out, or you want to, put up a certain sports decoration or something like that, and Mom may say, that looks terrible. Can't do that. Why not? And Sometimes you say, well, the husband's the head of the wife, but the wife is the keeper of the house. So you got to give me that. That's my realm. And so sometimes, man, I know I'm not the only one. Sometimes you just sort of have to say touche. And you say, okay. But moms manage, and they manage the household, and it really is an amazing thing to watch moms as they carry out that work. But not just the household. That's kind of a more over-encompassing, all-encompassing term. But they often are managing money. Proverbs 23, verse 5 is kind of a general statement here. Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle toward heaven. Isn't that the truth? Sometimes people say money talks. I think it might have been Mark Twain that said, money talks, mine says goodbye. Money does have a way of making itself as if it has wings, right? It just seems to fly away. But moms are so often good at managing money. Now, we understand in different households, in your household, the man may be better with managing the money. Mom may be better managing the money. Sometimes it's husband, sometimes it's wife. Sometimes neither one is that great at it, and there are problems that come from that, and that's something that needs to be given attention because in fact, I think last I checked, it's been a few years, but I think the last I checked, it was actually the number one marriage problem area, finances. But so often, it certainly is the case in my family, that mom is good at managing the money. It may or may not be the accounts, doing the budget and things like that, but oftentimes, again, it's not always, but oftentimes mom's buying the groceries, she's buying household items and things like that. But here's my point, and we can kind of summarize with this, and it applies to dads as well, but in our context here specifically for moms, if mom is not a good financial manager, let me tell you something, everybody in the home will feel it. It's going to affect everyone. And so often, things are okay in the home financially because mom is such a good manager of the money. But not just managing the household, managing money, she manages time. In Ephesians 5:15 and 16, Paul says there, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Moms just have this incredible ability, and I think, again, I don't think it's necessarily across the board, but I think far more often than not, it's a unique ability with women, and I think it's a lot to do with that ability to multitask. I tell people I'm not a multitasker. I have to focus on one thing at a time. But they have this unique ability to keep up with appointments, practice schedules, church activities, so many different things, doctor appointments. It's just people sometimes ask me, it might be, to speak, or it might be planning some kind of an outing or something. What about this date? My constant, every single time response is, let me check with my calendar. And what that means is, let me check with Reagan, because she'll know. And sometimes I've gotten a little bit too eager and said, sure. And I say something maybe a few days later, and Reagan will say, Chad, we got this going on that day. I say, oh, okay. Managing time. Moms help keep everybody in the right place at the right time. Unique ability to do that. But not just the household, not just money, not just time. We could also say that moms manage egos. What do we mean by that? Well, Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. And in verse 3, he mentions a time to kill and a time to heal. Now, I'm not talking about that part of the verse. A time to break down and a time to build up. You see, mothers know their children, and they know what their children need. And again, moms have this unique ability to know when a child needs uplifting. There's a verse in Isaiah 66:13 that God says to the nation of Israel, as one whom his mother comforteth, so will I comfort you. There's not a person on earth who doesn't understand that statement. If you have a mom who has taken care of you and has sought and striven to be a good mom, there's not a person on earth that doesn't understand. As one whom his mother comforteth, so will I comfort you. Moms know. They just have that ability to know when we need a little bit of encouragement, we need some uplifting, but you know what's next, don't you? Moms also know when a child needs a little bit of humbling, when he needs brought down a peg or two. Romans 12, verse 3, Paul says, "For I say through the grace given unto me to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think." And sometimes we do that. Boys, girls, both. Sometimes you get to thinking too highly, and again, I can only speak from my experience, but I also have seen it with other families as well, that mom, she knows sometimes, and she can bring us down a notch when we need that. Moms are managers. But looking at the O in mother, moms are observers. A mother is an observer. She observes her children. There are two statements in the book of Luke, chapter 2, verses 19 and 51. Verse 19 says, "Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart." Verse 51 says, his mother, talking about Jesus' mother, Mary, kept all these sayings in her heart. She's watching, listening, and sort of taking it all in. Sometimes she doesn't even understand all of it at the time, but she's just sort of observing and laying these things up in her heart. Moms do that. They observe their children. They're observing their children's influences, understanding that evil communications corrupt good morals, 1 Corinthians 15:33, and moms keep a watch on that, and sometimes offer correction when it's needed. They are observing their entertainment. Psalm 101, verse 3, David says there, "I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes." Moms are oftentimes observing their kids and saying, okay, don't need to be watching that. And again, with all of these characteristics of a mother, not every mother fills these roles as they should. And understand, no mother is perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect mom. There's no such thing as a perfect dad. And there's no such thing as perfect children. Brother Jim Boyd used to say, no such thing as perfect children. That comes when you have grandchildren, right? But these are things where we need to keep a close eye, right? And moms so often do that. And sometimes even when dad is getting a little lax, mom's observing her children, their influences, their entertainment, and we can kind of just sum up and say their lives. 2 Timothy 1:5, Paul says, talking to Timothy, he mentions, "When I call to remembrance the unfeigned faith that is in thee." He says, "Which dwelt first in thy grandmother Lois and thy mother Eunice, and I am persuaded that in thee also." They just watch their lives. They watch, they remember, they hold on to accomplishments. They watch and they see when there's some correction that is needed. And they observe their children. Just, again, like with Mary, just laying it up in their heart, keeping all these things in their hearts. But she also observes her marriage. Again, we already noticed 1 Timothy 5:14, that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house. Titus 2, verse 5, he mentions there for the older women to teach the younger women to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. 1 Peter 3:1 puts it this way, "Likewise, you wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they may also without the word be won by the conversation of the wives." In other words, a woman she's observing her marriage and she's aware maybe she has a husband who's not a Christian. She's trying to lead him to Christ. She's not just going to be a constant thorn in his side about that. She's not going to be constantly on him about that. But more than anything, not the only thing, but she's going to live that example and set an example before him. And so often it helps. And it also is often the case, again, not always, but she often knows. A wife and mother often knows when something is not quite right in the marriage and needs some attention. Sometimes as men, that may be because of job responsibilities, that may be because of other things, but sometimes as men, and sometimes, again, I can only speak for Chad, but sometimes if we're not careful, we can just be oblivious. That can happen to anybody. But so often you see wives, moms, they know when something's not quite right with the marriage and needs some attention, needs some work. Observing her children, observing her marriage relationship. But not only that, moms are teachers. A mother is a teacher. They teach love. And you know the old saying, there's just nothing like a mother's love. There's a verse in Isaiah 49:15. God there, again, he's addressing Israel. And he says, can a woman forget her nursing child that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? And of course he goes on and he says, yea, they may forget, yet will I not forget thee. God says your own mother will forget you, will neglect you before I will. And he's drawing on that comparison because everybody understands the love of a mother. They teach us, if we're willing to listen and learn, they teach us how to love. Not only that, they teach honesty, putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbor, Ephesians 4:25. Mom, again, sadly it's not always the case, but good mothers, they're teaching their children the importance of honesty. They're teaching their children responsibility. 1 Corinthians 14:20, there's a verse there when Paul is addressing Christians, but there is a concept here that certainly is applicable, and moms use this concept in teaching responsibility. Paul says, be not children in understanding. Don't be just a child in your understanding. He says, howbeit in malice be ye children. In other words, be quick to forgive, not so short-tempered and quick to anger. But he says, in understanding, be men. Be mature. Be a grown-up in your understanding. And moms help teach us to be grown-ups in our understanding. They also teach discipline. So many verses we could look at. Proverbs 22:15. Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. Proverbs 29:15 says, the rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame. And then drop down just a couple of verses in verse 17. Correct thy son, and he shall give thee rest. Yea, he shall give delight unto thy soul. Mothers are often teaching discipline. I worried about being in trouble with my dad growing up, but I think there were many times when I was more fearful of mom, and she could administer swift and sure discipline. Now we understand that's not always in the form of a spanking. It's not always in the form of grounding. It's not always even what we might call corrective discipline. Sometimes it's instructive discipline. But a mother is a teacher in the form of teaching discipline. A mother is, we might say, a hinderer. Now, as I put on here, this may sound bad. We may say, well, my mom is a hinderer. In fact, I think it was this one or the next one that Noah saw it on the handout, and he says, a hinderer? What is that supposed to mean? And I said, well, you got to listen to the lesson and find out. So hope you're listening, Noah. It may sound like a bad thing, but in this context, it's a good thing. Mothers are often hindering their children from sin. Again, that may be the instructive or corrective discipline. It might be from love in general. It might be from praying for them or some combination of those. Heard about a man years ago that he went off into the military. Gets out of basic training. He's posted somewhere far away, and his mother told him, from the day he left to go to boot camp, she said, I want you to know I'm always going to be praying for you. And he grew up with Christian parents, and his mother especially told him, she said, you can know every Sunday morning and especially every Wednesday night. The church where he grew up, they had a special Wednesday night prayer service and Bible study. And she said every Wednesday night, come 7 o'clock, when they have that special time of prayer and they're taking requests, you're going to be prayed for. This young man, he tried to stay faithful, and he did for a time, and he began to be pulled away by the world and by some of the influences of fellow soldiers. And he ended up kind of falling away, and it just so happened one night, the guys said, let's go out, and they're going to go to a bar and have some drinks. And it was a Wednesday. And he's sitting there in the bar with his buddies drinking, and it just so happened somebody in the bar hollered out. This was years ago. Everybody didn't just have a cell phone, But somebody hollered out and said, hey, what time is it? And the reply came back, 7 o'clock, straight up. And the man just froze. And he knew, Mama is praying for me right now. And here I sit with my back turned on the Lord and turning away from what I know is right. And he told his buddies, he said, I'm out of here. I got to make some changes. Moms have a way often of hindering their children from sin. Sometimes just their love and their prayers alone can hinder their children from sin, but also through that instructive and corrective discipline. A mother also hinders many times her husband from mistakes. Sometimes as men, we may get carried away and if we're not careful, go overboard with discipline. Sometimes it may be a rash or thoughtless decision, a reactionary type decision. Sometimes mother may say, hold on, and offer a different perspective. Growing up, my grandmother and granddaddy Campbell, they had trouble with one of the children. It may have been the oldest, I don't remember, but one of their first couple of children, as they got to talking, started calling them Bob and Allie Mae. Those were their names. And they said, don't do that. You're not going to call me by my first name. That was disrespectful. Well, they kept having trouble. This child just wasn't getting it. I mean, they hear them calling each other by the first name. So he started calling her mother so that the child would call her mother. She started calling him daddy. For all of my memories until they died and left this earth, I remember them referring to each other as mother and daddy. It just became a habit, and that was how they referred to each other. Sometimes, though, granddaddy would get carried away about something, and maybe he's on his high horse about something, and he's mad about something. He feels really mistreated, and he's not really looking necessarily at the other side of it, and sometimes I could just hear grandmother saying, Daddy. And that was all it took. And he would just sort of freeze, and there would be a look between them, and you knew that. And he'd kind of calm down. Many husbands have been saved from many foolish decisions by a good, wise, and oftentimes by a Christian wife. Mothers often are hinderers. But you know what else? Mothers are enablers. This is another one. This word has kind of come to have a negative connotation in our society today. We say don't want to be an enabler. And it certainly in that context, as how it's used many times, is not a good thing. Sometimes mothers become an enabler in that their child gets into trouble and they're constantly bailing them out, never letting them suffer consequences of a bad decision. And that can be an enabler in a bad sense. Moms and dads both have fallen into that from time to time. And it's hard sometimes to know, when should I help them out? When should I go and try to maybe talk to the teacher about that grade, or when should I just let them get that failing grade because they didn't study, they didn't prepare, they didn't put the time and the work in, and let them learn a hard lesson? Or maybe they get into trouble, a traffic ticket or something like that. When do you step up and help out? Sometimes a parent will just step up, let me just pay that for you. And sometimes you say, no, you did this, you're going to have to take care of that. My mom told me when I first got my license, she said, you get a ticket in that thing? She said, you're going to pay every red cent. And she said, and you're going to have a hard time doing it too, because you're not going to have wheels to get to a job to earn the money to pay for it. You're going to have to find a ride or something, because you won't be driving for a long time. But enabler, we don't want to be an enabler in the bad sense, but moms often enable dad to fulfill his role. 1 Timothy 5:8, if any man provide not for his own, especially those of his own household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. That requires a lot of responsibility, and it requires a lot of cooperation, a lot of teamwork. It's not something dad does on his own, certainly. But mom, as an enabler in this sense, so often enables dad to fulfill his role. And I put on the handout, we didn't look at it for time's sake. Levi read through Proverbs 31, 10 through 31. But there's a passage within that context of the worthy woman or the worthy mother, the worthy wife, there in Proverbs 31, that kind of corresponds with each one of these points. But here's one where we especially want to look at that in verses 11 and 12. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. Here's a man that doesn't have to worry about when he makes money and he turns around and it's gone. Where's the paycheck? It's already been spent. He doesn't have to worry about that because mom's helping out, and by fulfilling her role, she's enabling him to fulfill his. It goes on in verse 12, she will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. Drop down to verse 23. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. You know the old saying, behind every good man is a good woman. And she enables Dad to fulfill his role. And this man is known in the gates because he has a good wife. And then, of course, verse 28, her children arise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praiseth her. Moms often enable Dad to fulfill his role. Moms enable their children to grow. In Titus 2:4, it talks about their teach again, the older women teaching the younger women to love their children, to love their husbands, love their children. This is sometimes, again, allowing them to endure tough times in order to grow, to endure some consequences of a bad decision, something that they did wrong, so that they might grow. Sometimes even, it may not even necessarily be something that they did wrong, but again, moms, it sometimes requires some wisdom, and moms, again, have that unique trait about them many times of knowing when to say, and even sometimes saying to Dad, hey, step back. Let them endure this, because it's going to make him or her, them, better because of it. Sometimes she enables her children to grow through tough love. Sometimes it's the look. We all know what that is. Sometimes it's just her godly example. But moms enable their children to grow. Mothers are truly enablers in the good sense. And then finally, moms are, we could say, restorers. A mother is a restorer. She restores calm in fearful times. Listen, when you think back to when you were a child, when you were fearful, there was nothing like a hug or a kiss from mom to help calm you down. Just nothing like that. They restore calm in fearful times. They restore hurting hearts. Whether kids are little or big, there's just something about mother. She can always help to restore a hurting heart. She may not completely make everything just go away. She can't just magically make problems go away. But she always helps to restore a hurting heart. And moms often restore peace in the family. That may be between two children that are going at it. My friend Barry Gilreath Jr. was telling me that it was his wife, Jody. She was telling us one time, we were just sitting at lunch, and we were talking about kids and how they can really bicker and argue and fight. And she said, one time I walked in the room just in time to see Barry the Third reared back, and before I could even say anything, he just popped Tyler right in the nose. It said just blood going everywhere, and she was freaking out, and it was just a big mess. But, moms restore peace in the family. Mom is often a mediator or an arbitrator. And you know what? Again, we all have moms. You know the truth of this. Sometimes mom is judge, jury, and executioner. You don't mess with mom. She can restore peace in the family, and she can often do it right quickly. What is a mother? She's a manager, an observer, teacher, a hinderer, an enabler, and a restorer. From Proverbs 31, 28 through 31, we read some of that, where her children rise up, call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. He says, many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. Man, you could say amen if you want to, but I think it certainly is deserving of it. But thank God for mothers. I am so thankful for my mother. I certainly was not the perfect child. I didn't make life easy on them. But they did a great job in teaching me to love the Lord, teaching me to follow the Lord. As I said on the handout there, the greatest gift we can give our mothers is to be a faithful Christian. To take care of that first, as Paul said to Timothy, 1 Timothy 4:16, take heed to thyself and unto the doctrine. Continue in them, for doing this thou shalt both save thyself and them that hear thee. Making sure I'm a Christian, a faithful Christian first and foremost, and then helping mom to be one as well. You may say, my mom's already a faithful Christian. Well, believe me, nothing will help her to continue in that more than having a faithful Christian child. Maybe she's not a faithful Christian right now. If you're a faithful Christian, then you can help her to be a faithful Christian herself. And so as we close out, the greatest honor we can give to our mothers, it's the right thing to do, simply, period. But the greatest honor, the greatest gift we could give our mothers, Mother's Day or any day, is to be a faithful Christian. Are you a faithful Christian this morning? Maybe you need to turn your life over to the Lord in repentance. Do you believe Jesus is the Christ, your one hope? If you do, and you're willing to submit to His will, you can confess Him as Lord and be immersed in water. Buried with Him in baptism, Romans 6:3-4. Raised up to walk in newness of life. Your sins will be washed away in that act. Acts 22:16 tells us. And He will add you to His church, as we read in Acts 2:47. Maybe you've done that and you're not where you need to be spiritually. The best thing we can do is to be a faithful Christian. And then we can help others to do the same. Can we help you this morning to be a faithful Christian? Maybe you need prayers for strength, for encouragement, for accountability. If we can help you in any way, that's why the invitation is extended. Won't you come while we stand and sing to encourage you?